Recently, I have seen lots of people show a picture of a flower, a rose, specifically on Facebook rose groups, and ask for the ID. I mentioned this on a blog post a couple days ago, and this is just a follow up on things to show beyond just the flower that can help with the ID. Obviously, a flower can help. There are roses out there that the flower is very distinctive, and you'll be able to tell right away what flower it is. But that's not what the case with all of them. You can go back to the post that I showed a couple days ago to see 3 pictures of roses that are all pink, and try to identify them if you want. You don't have to. One thing you can look at beyond just the flower is the calyxes or the sepals, the flower bud covering, which are these green things right here. They can be distinctive in shape and form. Another thing you could do is look to see if there's clusters of flowers or if they're solitary. You can also look at the back side of the rose, or it's also called the receptacle. Here's a good shot of it right there where my index, in between my index finger and the middle finger is. Right there, that's the receptacle. That will, if the flower is pollinated, will swell and form a hip. Here's one in the process of being formed. That's the receptacle. The sepals on this rose, which happens to be Abraham Darby, pulled downwards. I do have some hips that are further along that actually some of the sepals have fallen completely off. Another thing you can show is the leaves. An advantage of that, here I'm just going to pull this off so we can see it, is, so there's a leaf with 5 leaflets. Some roses have 5, some have 7, some have up to 11, or can have up to 11. What I'm showing you right now is what's called the petiole. This is really this can be a really good identifier. Rosa multiflora and some of its offspring, if not most, if not all of its offspring, has like a fringe to it. This is not a Rosa multiflora offspring. Ooh, let's see if I can get that more focused. Some of the petioles even come out different colored. Another identifying characteristic you can use is the thorns of the rose. And some roses have very distinct thorns. There's one rose, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, that it has wide, broad red roses. Or roses, I'm sorry. There's one rose that has wide, broad red thorns that are very characteristic of that specific rose. I'll put in the comments what the rose that is, because again, I'm not going to try to pronounce the word. There's one that's dead that I just removed. There's also a new growth that you can use as an identifier. Roses such as Safrano have very distinct new growth. There are roses that the new growth is green. Some are, I guess you can kind of call that red for it. Other things that you can use as an identifier is the climate in which you're growing. Currently, I'm growing this Abraham Darby in Missouri, which happens to be a zone 5B6A, so it's looking at lows possibly as low as -15 on a really bad winter. That's Fahrenheit. And it's hardy to that. This particular Abraham Darby happens to be on the east side of my house, so it's a little bit smaller than the ones I have up on the south fence line. But I'm not going to walk up there because there's lots of weeds, and you probably can see enough here. The overall picture of the rose, which it's kind of hard to see, but just starting from here, going around to this, oops, there's the tall, all the way out to here is Abraham Darby. That could be an example of a way to identify roses as well. Also, you can identify roses by the scent. Abraham Darby does have a fragrance, other roses don't. I'm sure there are other ways that people use, and if you can come up with other ways to identify roses, leave them down in the comments. And thank you for your time, and thank you for watching the video.